you need a tool and don't buy it, you'll pay for the tool and not have it. Henry Ford. Hey guys, thanks for checking out Next Level Carpentry, where you'll see me unbox and assemble this Powermatic 2820 EVS drill press, show you some of its features, and tell you what I think about it. FYI, this video isn't sponsored by Powermatic or anyone else, and I want to make it clear that my decision to upgrade from an old Delta 17-990X drill press to this new Powermatic PM2820 EVS is because I feel it's the best option for my needs in the market today. Since negotiations with Powermatic never left square one, I purchased this new drill press outright from ACME Tools. So my observations and evaluation of this machine aren't influenced by an obligation to or incentive from anyone. With that disclaimer in mind, I am excited to announce a new affiliate relationship for the channel with ACME Tools, which is the result of a very positive experience I had when purchasing this drill press. I'll introduce ACME Tools later in this video when I reveal a new piece of equipment that they sent to me that makes the hardest part of assembling this massive drill press a one-man operation that's easier, simpler, and most importantly, safer. If any nitpicking trolls are watching this, I fully expect that your head will explode before you leave this video in a huff complaining that the host was deceptive about sponsorship. So don't let your browser hit you in the backside on the way out. I also expect that rational viewers will understand the great benefit of not collaborating with Powermatic on this drill press, because I get to upgrade my upgrade, which I'll do later in the video by replacing the standard keyed chuck that comes with the 2820 EVS with a top-of-the-line Lambrick keyless chuck, which, it's worth mentioning, I bought outright from Grainger with no collaboration ties with them either. And now, if I can just figure out how to get out of this giant box, I'll get to work unpacking and assembling my new drill press. Shazam! Not only did that get me out of the giant box, it also got me out of mini-me mode, so I can give you a tour of what's in this carton. And I might as well start off by saying that this seems to be really well packed. There's no damage on this cart, and the way it's set up, I think it could sustain quite a bit of damage to the carton and not wreck anything inside. You probably noticed earlier that Powermatic stows some of the smaller items for the drill press in the top of the lid in the top of the carton, including instructions, a fence, handles for raising and lowering the quill, handles and a gear for raising and lowering the table. This wedge here is for removing the chuck from the quill. This small box is the standard keyed chuck that comes with the drill press, along with the chuck key. This little container here is the dual tapered spindle for attaching the chuck to the quill, 4 bolts for attaching the column to the base, and a couple of gimme wrenches for putting this whole thing together. With that top styrofoam block removed, you can see the pieces that I was walking around on just a minute ago, including the column with a retainer ring for the raising and lowering rack gear, the head of the drill press itself, that's the business of this whole operation. Here is the table, underneath is the base. Also notice how well this styrofoam block keeps everything in place during shipping. The block is cracked, but nothing's damaged. And I think a smart part of the packaging is these solid wood blocks that slip in between the styrofoam and keep things from crushing the box, i.e. when they put a crate with an elephant in it on top of the drill press at the loading dock for shipping. I think these blocks here help preserve the integrity of the shipment, which is a very nice thing. According to the instructions, which I actually do read from time to time, job 1 is to connect the column to the base. So I need to unpack those things from the carton so I can clean the rust preservative oil off of them before making the actual connection. Ooh. They say the head of the drill press weighs in at 150 pounds plus, so you can see it tip the pallet on the cart, and I'll have to deal with that later. But for now, I put on a pair of nitrile gloves and remove the protective plastic film from the column and the base so that I can get them cleaned up before assembly. I use a mild automotive type grease removing solvent to remove the oil from the machined surfaces because the instructions caution against using anything harsh like lacquer thinner or acetone, which could easily damage plastic and painted surfaces. The oil isn't thick or sticky, so I'm able to remove it quickly by spritzing it with a little bit of that solvent and wiping it with paper towels until the gleaming machine surfaces are clean and dry. Before wiping oil off the column, I use a 3mm hex key to remove the upper ring from the table height adjustment rack gear and set those pieces aside for the future step where the table is placed on the column. And I'm thankful for the fact that the oil is both easy to remove and does its job well in protecting these machine surfaces. And it takes just a few minutes to get these parts cleaned up and ready for assembly. Even though some will consider it a bit silly, I've adopted the practice of signing and dating significant pieces of equipment like this in an obscure place, anticipating that some future user will come across the signature and smile at the history that it signifies, because I've always enjoyed and appreciated little time capsule things like this when I come across them when I acquire an old piece of equipment or disassemble something put together by a craftsman in a previous generation. Call me crazy, but I'm just enough of an old car guy that I want to see a gasket between these two heavy castings, so I quickly trace and cut out a piece of this thin rubberized cork to use in between the column's base and the top of the base plate. And after just a few minutes, with a few old school tools, I've got a nice gasket for fitting the column to the base, and can satisfy my old school urge for the fit up of these two pieces. Because I'm a one-man show and want to make the process of attaching the column to the base as simple as possible, I make a couple special blocks to make this easy on myself. The first block is 1 1/4 inches thick, and I'll use that to support the base of the column, and then cut 3 7/16 inches off one of the shipping blocks to support the round part of the column, so that the holes in the base and the holes in the column line up very nicely. Note that I'm orienting the label on the column towards the back of the machine, because it's less likely to get damaged there. I don't want to make Chip feel bad, so I won't tell him he's been replaced by a couple blocks of wood. But by using those blocks of wood as an aid, I'm able to position the column the right height off the floor and parallel to the floor, so that attaching the base is merely a matter of putting the base in position, slipping the gasket into place, aligning the holes, and then driving the 4 hex head cap screws with a 10mm T-handled hex wrench. Slight irregularities in the casting and the fact that I added a gasket complicate the alignment process a little bit. But with a little wiggling and diggling, I'm able to get each of the bolts started. Once all 4 bolts are started, I use a rubber mallet to fine-tune the alignment between the column and the base before tightening the bolts sequentially for even torquing on the connection between the column and the base with the gasket in between. I think I'll buy that. And now, with everything in place and torqued down, you can see the other advantage of assembling the base to the column on the floor with those spacer blocks, because it's no big deal at all to stand this guy up so that it's ready for the next step in the assembly process, which is installing the rack gear and the table. Now that the column is attached to the base, the next step is to install the table and the rack gear onto the column. And because this thing is such a beast, they recommend, and I concur, that you remove the insert table from the whole table, because if you don't make it easy on yourself, nobody else is going to do it for you. The insert is held into the main table with 4 socket head cap screws. So I use a 6mm hex driver in an impact to zip those 4 bolts out of place, to separate the tables for cleaning, and, of course, to lighten the load. Well, that sure wasn't smooth or elegant, but it accomplishes the purpose. So I could do a responsible job of moving the rust protectant from these parts. Although I'll take a couple seconds to remove the sacrificial plastic insert from the insert table to make sure I can get out all the protectant to remove it. And in my opinion, the sheen from the gleam of a brand new part with beautiful machining on it is equivalent to the new car smell you hear so much about regarding vehicles. And the finish is so pretty that I almost hesitate to use it. With all the cosmoline light removed from the table assembly to my satisfaction, the next step is to get this baby on the column. And the next step in the instruction manual is to put the worm gear inside here. But because I'm working alone, I'm going to do a couple other things, and that is to separate this part from that part. And to do that, I'm just removing this locking handle, which, by the way, is probably the most hinky piece of this thing that I've encountered yet. It's kind of this whopper jawed thing. I'm sure it does the job, doesn't get used that much, but it is a little, the fit and finish of that thing is a little questionable. But now I'm taking a 24mm hex wrench. Take out this table locking bolt here with all its associated washers. And with any luck, I'll be able to separate these two pieces. Let's see if I'm dreaming or successful. There we go. And this little piece right here is quite manageable for a one-man operation, so I'll just proceed by installing the worm gear in here. There's really nothing to this, I don't think. This guy slides down in there, comes out through the hole in the side, or so I'm told. And I just get those two gears to mesh in there, which is pretty simple, as you can see. And this little collar is pretty lightweight, which is nice for a one-man operation. I've got it going right side up, the crank handle to my right, and the goal is to insert this rack gear into a slot in this piece. It's important that the long unthreaded end is the top, according to the instructions. And then this baby just slips on the column like so. Not bad for a one-man operation, huh? Since I removed the actual table to reduce weight, I'll take advantage of the situation and put a little bit of grease on these surfaces here so that future angle adjustments of the table are sure to be a bit smoother. You can see I've lowered the height of this assembly to better assist putting this table in place, but that, friends, is what I call easy peasy. Yep, that's going to be very nice. And it looks like there's an adjustment for this indicator on the column, so I'll be able to dial this in to make sure the table is horizontal when I'm making future adjustments. But for now, I can tighten the table down and run the table tilt locking handle back into its rightful position. And I fuss with the table tilt tightening bolt and locking handle because the locking handle is designed with a pin that's supposed to hold the table in a perfectly horizontal position. But the ultimate accuracy of that arrangement is yet to be seen. Now I can slip the insert table back in place. And it probably only goes one way. And doing so will add a little bit of ballast. And I can feel this is not lined up quite like it should be. But I'm just going to tighten it down and I'll dial that in later. And apparently I was wrong. The notch in this handle must go towards, or the notch in this plate must go towards the back. And I suppose that's for setting it in like this. I guess that's right. And even adding the extra mass of that insert table, I still really like the way this elevation crank works. That's a pretty slick deal right there, compared to my old drill press where that raising and lowering was quite a chore. Get that baby locked in place, and now we're ready for the coup de grace, which is placing the head of the drill press on the column. Up to this point, I've been able to get by with the assembly process by working smart, which involved clever positioning of the parts and a little bit of extra disassembly. But I'm not able to complete the assembly process at this point with those methods alone because the head of the drill press is just too heavy and I don't want to take the whole thing apart just to put it on and put it back together. So I need to continue working smart, but I need to have some assistance. And the assistance for lifting that 150-pound plus head of the drill press comes in the form of a skyhook, which, if you look closely, you can see hanging from the shop ceiling right there. Anyone who's curious about how a skyhook capable of lifting 1,000 pounds plus appeared on the ceiling of the Next Level Carpentry shop, you can check out the video link here where I went through the entire process of how that's set up. And everyone who's familiar with the use of a skyhook understands that a skyhook can't do much by itself because although it's capable of supporting quite a load, it doesn't lift anything by itself. In this clip from the skyhook video, you can see that that skyhook is capable of lifting this entire carton right off the ground without any trouble. So I know it's plenty strong to lift just the head of the drill press. And a helpful viewer of the Skyhook video pointed out that while a come-along is definitely capable of lifting a carton this size, a come-along is much more suited to pulling loads than to actually lifting them, and that a piece of equipment called a chain hoist or a chain fall is much more suited to the task. And this is the point in the video where I'm going to introduce you to my friends at ACME Tools, who sent me just such a tool for exactly this task. So now it's time to unbox that chain hoist and show you exactly what I'm talking about. If you check out the website at acmetools.com, you'll see that they have a wide selection of types, sizes, capacities, and brands of these chain hoists. So I was able to pick out one specifically for use in the Next Level Carpentry shop. And with the ceiling height and the capacity of that Skyhook, I chose the Sumner 1-ton chain hoist with a lifting height capacity of 10 feet, which is perfect for a shop with a ceiling that's about 11 feet. And if you look, you'll see that some of those options are electric rather than manual, but for the infrequent use of relatively light loads, this 1-ton manual version is more than capable of anything that I need to lift with it. So let's crack this thing open and check it out. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly what a Sumner 1-ton chain hoist looks like, brand new out of the box. With a 1-ton capacity, this thing is no tinker toy, and it's got a fair amount of heft to it. But because in the world of chain falls, 1 ton is a pretty minimal capacity, it's not overly heavy at that, which makes it handy and useful for my application here in the shop. And as with any good chain fall, it has safety features built in, like safety clasps on both hooks, and according to the box, a dual pawl braking system for safely lifting loads. So you can work with confidence knowing that you can do your best work with this or any chain fall from my friends at ACME Tools. I have no intention of portraying myself as an expert in lifting safety, so make sure you read the precautions and best practices in the manual before doing any sort of lifting work. And after that, take the first step, which logically is to hang the chain fall from the Skyhook. Let's go, Buster. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all there is to that. It goes without saying that the second step is to hook the chain to the load that's going to be lifted. And naturally, steps 1 and 2 are precluded by me being comfortable with my setup and rigging and the weight of the pick as compared to the lifting capacity of the Skyhook. And since I'm comfortable with all that, I just need to run this hook up to a suitable height for lifting the head of the drill press. Operating this hoist with no load is effortless, but according to the box, it takes only 55.8 pounds of pulling force to lift a load that's fully 1 ton. So that's not bad either. And that's close enough for starters, which is great because that sure looks fun in fast forward, doesn't it? Now that the lifter is in place, I need to reposition the lift E to get things set up for the last major assembly step for my new Powermatic drill press. And I start the process by jockeying the still heavy carton until the lift E is positioned relatively straight underneath the Skyhook on the ceiling. And this is where things get a little bit dicey because that is a pretty heavy chunk of cast iron, plus it's got fragile parts like laser beams and switches sticking out of it. So I've got to maneuver it into position without hurting myself or any of the parts. And I've never done this before, so this is a first run that I've come up with and think will work fine. So bear with me and let's see how this goes. Because I need to maneuver the head of the drill press into its final upright position so that it can be picked straight up and lowered back down onto the column. And I work through this process in my head and not sure how it goes until this is over. Something like that. The Powermatic instructions talk about breaking open the cardboard box, etc. to make this more accessible, but I thought I could get by just maneuvering the drill press over onto a piece of 1/2-inch MDF there, which is solid enough that I can rotate the drill press head into position to put the support strap and chains underneath it. And the Powermatic manual talks about the lasers being set up before shipment, but you can adjust them afterwards. And I'm thinking manhandling like this is the main reason that's in the instruction, because if those lasers were set up before, I'm sure all this grunting and positioning here will knock them out of alignment if they were aligned to begin with. The Powermatic owner's manual talks about having 3 people to lift this head onto the column, which would be about 50 pounds apiece, and doesn't sound too bad. But alternatively, it recommends a 2-strap system for picking up the head of the drill press if you're doing it with a forklift or maybe a chain hoist. So I'll start the process by using this sling here, which is rated at 5,000 pounds, and slipping that underneath the back here, which feels just as awkward as it looks. But this is going to work nicely in combination with the hook in the front, which I'll show you in more detail presently. Page 10 in the Powermatic owner's manual shows the system that I'm replicating for lifting the head of this drill press here. And you can see a strap in the back near the column socket, and then there's another strap in front. And that front strap connects to this lifting block, which they describe as a piece about 16 inches long, 4 inches wide, and 2.5 inches thick, with a 3-inch hole drilled in the middle for the drill press quill to slip through, and then 2 smaller holes on the ends for eye bolts. Which, as you'll see here, is a simple and effective plan for getting this job done. In bittersweet irony, I use my old Delta 17-990X drill press to drill the 3-inch hole in the lifting block for the new Powermatic drill press. And as you can see, although this drill press has got some years on it, it's got plenty of muscle to quickly drill a 3-inch hole through a Douglas fir 2x6 without breaking a sweat. Now I can drill a hole in each end of the block and bolt in a couple of hefty eye hooks to complete this hefty lifting block. I undersized the eye bolt holes just a little bit so that they actually thread into the wood for just a skosh more holding power, although I'm sure it's not necessary. But having the hooks secure in those holes will make rigging a little bit easier. With that lifting block complete, I need to slip it under the head of the drill press so that the quill sticks through this hole. And you can't really see it in the camera shot, but that quill is sticking down about a couple inches out of the bottom of the head of the drill press. So I need to get that part done, and I'm just not quite sure how this is going to go, but I'm going to give it a shot. Actually, I think I'll temporarily hook this strap on here. Maybe help give it a little bit of support. See if that helps. Oh yeah, that wasn't so bad. As I work through this process, I think it's fair to say that a job like this can kind of get distorted in your mind about what's actually involved. I keep thinking of the weight of the drill press, the cost of the drill press, and building a video for this and everything. And it can get a little bit disproportionate, but looking at it with this perspective at this point, this really isn't that big of a deal. The manual says that, that this head weighs 150 pounds. If that's the case, each of these straps basically has about 40 pounds on it, which, you know, in the scheme of things isn't really all that much. But I think I better get a different strap for this because this isn't quite long enough. And I want to be able to adjust the head to slide it down onto that column. So what I'm saying about that is, you know, I've got a hoist capable of 1 ton. I've already had 500 pounds on that sky hook. All I'm lifting is 150 pounds. Even if it was 200, that's not very much. Although I do want to be careful because 150 pounds can still kill you, and that wouldn't be any fun. But I'm liking this setup the way it is. I'll just put a little tension on these cables here. And I got to say that it wouldn't hurt my feelings any if I could take this plastic cover off, if there was just a single hook in there that I could an eye hook underneath there that I can just pick this whole thing up, but it's not designed that way. So here we are working with what we got, and I'll bring it in close as I take the weight of the head from the crate onto the hoist. It's tilting a little bit forward, so I'm going to shorten the length of this strap. And you can see now that the head of the drill press is basically levitating above the carton, which is exactly what I want. But I'll do a little shifting here to even it up so that the head of the drill press hangs a little more true in the straps. And like I just said, there's only probably 40 pounds on each one of those straps, so those adjustments are easily made. Although I really want each one of those straps to be able to hold the whole load by itself, which I'm confident of. It's just not that heavy of a thing in this setup. And there we have it, a levitating drill press head. That's pretty sweet, no fault, no foul. So I can get this carton out of here and slide the column over this way to get things pre-aligned for slipping the head down onto the column. And miraculously, somehow that carton's a whole lot lighter now than it was just a couple minutes ago. And I think this whole exercise really demonstrates how much better suited a chain fall is to lifting things than this come along that I used in the skyhook video, because all I need to do to reverse directions a little at a time is to pull one chain or the other, and it raises and lowers it incrementally, where this goes up and down in clicks. So much better function to make this whole process simpler, easier, and as I said at the beginning of the video, safer. But then again, I don't want to use a chain fall to pull my truck out of a ditch, because a come along is a tool for that job. Now that everything's explained and set up, setting the drill press head onto the column is actually kind of anticlimactic. I'm not pulling very hard at all on the chain, although I can tell there's a little more resistance with the head of the drill press suspended from the lifting hook, but the relative effort is insignificant. Got to be getting close, right? Not bad for an initial run, eh? Because there seems to be some resistance for the head sliding down onto the column. I stop for a second and use a 5mm hex key to make sure the tips of the set screws aren't interfering with the installation of the head on the column. And I can tell when there's slack in the straps and the head rotates freely on the top of the column that it's down where it needs to be. So I can just undo the rigging and move the drill press out from under the hooks and chains of the chain fall, so I can secure the head to the column using that 5mm T-handled hex driver to lock everything in place. Ultimately, I want the head of the drill press to line up with the base, but for now, I'll adjust it by eye and snug the screws in place before proceeding with final assembly. And that will definitely do it for now. As I move the drill press around the shop to reposition it for the camera work, I keep in mind that this unit is pretty top heavy, although not nervously so, but I don't want it to tip over either, because I think that any damage incurred by tipping the drill press over onto the concrete floor of the shop wouldn't be covered by warranty. What do you think? Now that the drill press head is securely in place, only a few minor assembly items remain, which include installing 3 handles for raising and lowering in the quill, attaching the depth stop adjustment lever, and reinstalling the sacrificial plastic insert into the hole in the table. And although the machine finish on the drill press table is flawless, this plastic insert is a bit disappointing because it's pretty flimsy and not very impressive even when it's leveled and secured into place. Now that the assembly process is complete for everything except the chuck, I'm going to switch back to Next Level Carpentry mode so that I can upgrade my drill press upgrade with an upgrade to the keyed chuck that comes with the PM2820 by installing a top-of-the-line Lambrick JK130-MT2 precision keyless chuck, which is an amazing piece of machining. The main reason I decided to upgrade from the standard keyed chuck to this precision Lambrick model is for the convenience of the keyless feature. Both chucks have a range that starts at 1/32 of an inch, and where the Lambrick goes up to a 1/2 inch maximum bit diameter, the standard chuck actually goes up to a full 5/8 of an inch. But despite the larger capacity, most of the bits I use are in that 1/32 to 1/2 inch range, and the convenience of the keyless feature is more than worth it for the few times I need a larger bit. And If I get backed into that corner, I can always swap out the Lambric for the standard for whatever operation I do that needs a larger bit. Lambric chucks are known the world over for their precision, and the precision of this chuck is no doubt greater than this one, but for all intents and purposes, the work I do, the precision of the standard chuck is more than adequate, but extra precision isn't going to hurt anything. Another difference between these two chucks is that the standard chuck is installed with this spindle that I showed you earlier, and this has a MT2 taper that goes up into the quill of the drill press, and this is a JT3 taper that goes into the chuck itself. And where the standard keyed chuck is a two-piece design, the Lambric is a single piece, requiring only the MT2 taper to fit into the spindle because this shaft is machined as part of the actual chuck itself. So it's a little more precise and a little more compact and makes a nice design feature, even though it could be easily construed as overkill. Observant viewers will notice the lands on the side of this part of the keyless chuck, and those lands are for this auxiliary tightening wrench when the hand tightening ability of the keyless chuck isn't adequate. But from what I hear from other users, they keep this wrench on hand but never need to use it. And I want to give a shout out here to the JN Woodworks channel on YouTube, because it's the review of the PM2820 on his channel where I first learned of the existence of Lambric keyless chucks. So I'll put a link to his excellent video about this drill press in the video description below, because he went above and beyond in doing run-out testing of the standard chuck and spindle versus the Lambric chuck he has. It's a little different model, I think, but he does a great job of demonstrating the difference in precision between the two models. And while I'm giving that shout out to JN Woodworks, I'll compliment him on the job that he did comparing the torque, etc., between the predecessor model that Powermatic came out prior to this, which is a belt-driven unit, variable speed but belt-driven, because he did a great job of side-by-side testing using a 3-inch diameter bit in both drill presses and doing some assessment on torque, etc. And all that's worth watching, and because he did that, I get an excuse not to go to all the trouble of doing testing in the legitimate manner that he did. So if you're curious about those things, check out the link to his video in the video description. And again, thanks for turning me and the world on to these amazing chucks by Lambric. Surprisingly, when compared to other steps for assembling a drill press, installing the chuck is a relatively simple process. The most important thing is to remove any grease or oil from the MT2 taper that slides up into the spindle. So I'll use a little bit of that light solvent to dissolve the oil, and then wipe the taper with a clean dry paper towel to remove any solvent residue. And then I clean inside the spindle by twisting up a paper towel, giving it a spritz of that solvent, and twisting it around inside that taper with a popsicle stick. That'll remove any of the heavy oil. And I finish up by using a dry paper towel to remove any residual solvent from the female side of this taper as well. Once I'm satisfied that the taper on the chuck and the hole inside the spindle are free of any oil or solvent residue, I fully retract the jaws of the chuck, swing the table out of the way, slip the spindle up into the quill, and give the chuck a couple sharp raps with a plastic face hammer to set it in place. And that really is all that it takes. Should the occasion ever arise where I need to chuck up a 5/8 inch bit and need to swap back to the original keyed chuck, all it takes to remove this chuck is to lower the quill and lock it in a down position, line up the slot in the quill and the arbor, and then use the included tapered wedge to pop out the keyless chuck and install the spindle for the keyed chuck that came with the drill press. Just as simple as that. Before I make a few adjustments to dial in this drill press and fire it up, I'll ask viewers that you consider subscribing to Next Level Carpentry if you haven't already. It's free, you know, and as a subscriber, you're on the short list to be notified when a new video like this one gets uploaded to the channel. And if you like this particular video, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit the thumbs up button to tell YouTube you like it, and in the spirit of this video, go ahead and use a plastic face mallet to hit the button so it doesn't get damaged in the process. I don't think you have to retract the jaws on the thumbs up button before you hit it, but if there's jaws on there, retract them before you hit it, just in case that thumbs up button is made by Lambric. Okay, that was silly. And as long as I'm paused here, I'll explain that although this video isn't sponsored by Powermatic or ACME Tools, I have started a new influencer affiliate arrangement with ACME Tools, And I'll include links in the video description for this drill press and that Sumner chain hoist, along with a link to the general ACME Tools catalog. And by shopping with Next Level Carpentry through those links, you help support the channel, because even though the prices are the same to you as with any of the products on their site, they pay small ad fees to the channel that help production of videos like this. And I really feel that ACME Tools provides better value for the same products at the same price, because they have product knowledge and customer care that you won't find at other online shopping outlets that are more about moving product than satisfying customers. And no infomercial break here on the channel would be complete without giving a shout out to patrons who support Next Level Carpentry with patronage through Patreon. I call those patrons the above and beyond group, because the financial support they provide by being patrons offsets income that I don't make, because I'm not pandering to companies with sponsorship. And it just helps me to continue producing content like this for all viewers on YouTube everywhere. And to express my extra appreciation to patrons, I'm building a growing library of patron-only videos that active patrons have access to through Patreon. And those videos have a lot of in-depth, behind-the-scenes information from Next Level Carpentry Shop, my day job where I do custom design, build, remodeling work for discerning clients, and just other things about the world and life in general. So if that's something that interests you, there is a link to Patreon in the video description below. Check it out and sign up if it's something you're motivated to do. And I'll close this out by talking about clothes in the form of t-shirts and other swag from the Next Level Carpentry channel, which you can find through the link to spring in the video description as well, in case you want some NLC swag to fortify your wardrobe. And I think that's about enough of that. So I'm going to get back to work and make a few adjustments on this drill press before I build a fire under it and see how it works. Well, let's go. The main adjustment to make is to flush up the insert table with the main table here, and that's done with set screws on the underside of the table. And the best way to gauge when those two surfaces are flush is to slip the fence into its T-slots and then eyeball the gap between this fence and the table as adjustments are made to line them up. Adjustments are made to the height of the insert table by loosening the 4 6mm socket head cap screws so that the table is loose and free to move, and then backing off 12mm nuts on 4 4mm set screws, one at each corner of the table, to raise and lower it until everything is flushed up and perfect. By using the fence as a reference, it's easy to make these adjustments at the front and the back of the insert table so that all 4 corners are flush and accommodate sliding a workpiece around the table without interference. Once the desired height is reached on all 4 corners, hold the set screw in place and tighten the 12mm nut to lock the position, and then retighten all 4 of the 6mm hex head cap screws to hold the table insert firmly in place.
That was easy.
Flushing up the little plastic sacrificial insert is done in much the same manner, except in this case it's held in place with Phillips screws. The locking nuts are 10mm, and the set screws that do the actual leveling are 3mm. I hesitate to even show you that little plastic insert because it's pretty substandard, I would have to say, although it's disposable and it'll do its job like it is. But I included that section here because at some point I'll figure out a system for making a batch of replaceable inserts for that, because I switch drill bits all the time, and I can imagine using an insert 2 or 3 times and then chucking it and just slipping another one in there. So I'll make a stack of those out of scrap, and that's the sort of content that'll end up in a patron-only video at some point. But for now, I would have to say that the setup and assembly is complete, and I'm going to build a fire in this thing. Let there be light. Let there be power. Let there be laser light. Oh yeah. I'll do a little bit of side-by-side comparison between these two machines, not to convince anyone to upgrade from this to that, but to kind of highlight some of the reasons that I wanted to do the upgrade. And one of the most obvious things, first off, is that the newer Powermatic has a much nicer fit and finish than the older Delta. No big deal, you get what you pay for, and this was about 1/3 the money of that back in the day. Both machines are variable speed, but one key difference is that I've got this machine wired for its 220 capability. You can wire that one 110 or 220. I always ran at 220 for more power. This comes only in 110, but because of the EVS motor system. You got all the power you need, and all you need is a 120 volt outlet to get it. It's a little bit shallow to say, but having this nice LED work light compared to this one sticking out here, that's a nice feature. I really like it. This one was always adequate enough with the speed control. There's other dial type settings for speed controls on these belt driven variable speed models. This is all digital in these controls, and I'm not going to go into that in great depth, but it's a nice feature to have a digital readout. Besides the upgrade to a keyless chuck, which I certainly could have put on this machine, one of the nicest upgraded features, and it goes into the fit and finish category, is the depth stop. This is just a shaft with a little deal that slides up and down. This has got 2 dials on it. You can see other videos where they talk more about using that depth gauge, but it works great because you can re-zero the depth, you can set a depth stop, you can lock it in place in a down position, etc., etc. And the fit and finish of that whole mechanism is just a much nicer deal compared to the older technology on the older machine, which, although it's rudimentary, was certainly functional and always did for me what it needed to do. Another significant difference between the 2 machines is the design of the table. This one I've always had an auxiliary table on here because I do mostly woodworking, and the drill press is kind of more designed for doing metalwork and has this clamping table underneath it so that I can use a clamp for drilling steel, etc. This is a great table, functional, solid, has slots in here for bolting the vise down in any position, etc. But it's just not a very big table, so this larger table is going to help. But I think there's going to be a bit of a downside because the fit and finish of this table isn't anything to shout home about, and so I've never worried about scratching it or whatever by putting the vise on there. But I'm going to be a little bit paranoid about putting the first scratch in this table, so I'm sure I'm going to make some sort of an auxiliary wood table in there, and that auxiliary table will probably have a replaceable insert in it as well to accommodate that larger hole, which is a nice feature because a lot of wood boring operations are bigger than the teeny hole that they put in this drill press. But like the keyless chuck, I think there's going to be times when I'm going to kind of miss my old machine, and the table itself is probably the main feature that I'll miss. But there's always a workaround. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, the locking handle and the table raising lowering mechanism on this drill press is questionable, and rotating the table out of the way, the geared track on this one is a long skinny thing and it chatters around, it kind of really makes a mess, so it's always a big deal. And a lot of times in woodworking I'm doing repositioning the table numerous times on a given project, whereas this table is just very compliant with spinning it around, and that's most applied when I want to put the table vertically for drilling into the end of something. I think that the angle adjustment mechanism on both the tables, the way it locks and pivots and clamps in place, that's pretty similar. And if I was doing a lot of angled drilling, I would probably see the bolt and locking handle mechanism on this drill press to be a little bit lacking as well. But generally, I'm drilling either horizontal or once in a while vertically, rarely at an angle, and I'll just work around it like I've always done. Doing the wide range of things that I do, there's no one drill press that could handle everything perfectly all the time. But this one's adaptable, and I'm really looking forward to using a machine with digital variable speed, better fit and finish, nice work light, etc. And hopefully none of the fuss that I've experienced maintaining the variable speed belt drive mechanism that's in this upper housing. Because this one, as you can see if you go to their website, there's a transmission, a circuit board, and a motor in there. That's pretty much it. Well, this video has certainly taken an unexpected turn at this stage of the game. I've been filming on and off for a week, putting the drill press together, staging, and everything else, and just completed the setup on it. And if you want a little bit of insight into the life of a content creator for YouTube, here you go. I've got a sacrificial table and a block of mesquite to do some test drilling. I turn the light on, slip in a nice jumbo Forstner bit, chuck that baby in nice and tight in that Lambrick chuck, set the depth stop so it'll drill all the way through the piece of wood, shift the transmission into low gear, turn on the power master switch, press the magic green button to fire up my drill press to drill the first hole ever in its life. And all that only to learn that this variable speed drill press virtually has only one speed. The number changes, the RPMs aren't changing. And in the low range, this is supposed to go from 150 to 870, and I basically got nothing. So if there's any naysayers out there that want to challenge me whether I'm being sponsored by Powermatic or not, well, here's your proof. I don't think that they would want this in their video. I did some random testing, poking around, shifting the transmission, plugging, unplugging the machine, etc. I opened up the housing, didn't see any loose wires, etc. So I called the number for JPW listed in the owner's manual, and I got a hold of an Anthony. But since the clock on the wall says that it is Friday, July 1st, just minutes before a long holiday weekend, I don't think I'm going to get any resolution for this until after the 4th of July holiday. So here I am with a real world situation regarding a brand new drill press. And rather than edit this whole thing out, brush it over like this never happens to Next Level Carpentry, I'm just going to leave this in the video, and it'll be a teachable moment for Powermatic's reputation for customer service, customer care, and warranty service. In my short conversation with Anthony, he sounded like a very helpful person, and I'm confident that I'll get a resolution on this in fairly short order, but there again, it's going to be 4 days from now, and because I'm wearing a content creator hat, I need to wrap this video up, get it published and uploaded. So I'll just ask viewers to stay tuned to Next Level Carpentry to see how this resolves. And hopefully it's an isolated incident and not a negative sign for things to come, because I really am looking forward to using this machine here in the shop. So unfortunately, I've got to wrap up this video with a little asterisk saying to be continued, but I hope it doesn't diminish what you've seen in the video up to this point. So as always, and until next time, and I'm sure there's going to be a next time with some follow-up on this drill press, thanks for watching. Oh, go away, bad dream. Man, I can't believe it. I was just having this dream that I spent a week putting this drill press together, shooting video of it and everything. And then when I got to the end part where it was time to start it up, I turned the power on, pressed the start button, and the variable speed didn't work. Well, that's really weird, but I guess that really did happen. Huh, go figure. Well, I guess because this video is about unboxing and setting up the drill press, I'm just gonna leave the video like it is, and I'll do a future video to show you how this whole problem resolved, if I can ever figure it out. Something's going on. I have no idea, but you can't make this stuff up, can you? Good grief. I'm going back to sleep.